3 or 4 presentations that I've put together in preparation for a week-long course at the Digital Humanities Summer Institute that I'll be doing at the first week of June, where I'll be attempting to teach a bunch of faculty and graduate students and librarians everything there is to know about Drupal in a week. And so this was the one topic that I thought of. It didn't really fit into everything else, but there's a variety of things that I hope to sprinkle into the presentation over the course of the week. And it's a number of small tips and tricks that I've found over the years. For those of you who worked on Drupal sites a lot, you probably know some of them. Hopefully not all of them. And so maybe some of these things that I've found as solutions to problems will be useful for you too. If you have questions at any point, please feel free to interrupt me. And at the end, if there are other problems that you've been having or things that are in need of a tip or trick or solution, there'll be, I think, plenty of time for Q&A, and I'm happy to try to come up with a fix for whatever issues you're having with Drupal these days. So to start off with, administrative menu. If you don't know about administrative menu, or maybe it's administration menu, admin_menu, I highly recommend you give it a shot. I literally cannot work on a Drupal site without this module. If someone asks me to work on their Drupal site and they don't have it installed, I make it very clear up front that I need to install this module, otherwise, no work will continue until this module is installed. It really is pretty excellent. As you can see, I have it on every single one of my demo sites here, and every single other site I run in addition. Unlike Toolbar, where you basically just have these top-level things, it's this giant drop-down menu that has, it pretty much exposes to an arbitrary level of depth all of the administration functions in Drupal. So you hover over this, contact form, add category, then you can get into, far more deeply nested things than that. So structure, content type, item, manage fields. You can go to a field right here. This saves you about 8 clicks just with that, and you can go right to that place. It also, in addition to that, has some functions that are a little bit harder to find. You can flush all caches, which is a great trick for trying to solve any number of Drupal problems. If you need to flush caches, it's right here. You just hover over the house icon, and you can get it. If you need to run cron, you can do that. It's just a really great way to get around the site quickly and get to whatever you need at whatever level of depth. So if you don't use admin menu, I highly recommend that you install it today.
Question?
Yes.
I know in older versions it had quite a bit of overhead. Is that still the case?
I don't feel like it really slows things down. I mean, I have it on I guess I install it so much by default that perhaps my sites could be however many milliseconds faster, but yeah.
Well, I just have something to add when you're done.
No.
Okay. One thing that we've noticed is that by default it's set to cache itself on the client side, and that can cause, we ran into some problems where it would interfere with loading of other JavaScript. So there's a setting in the admin menu settings that you can say don't cache it in the browser, and that may slow it down a little bit for admin users, but it prevents some of the problems we had where style sheets wouldn't load, JavaScript wouldn't load because there was something wonky with the admin menu cache.
Thanks.
Quinn, I was going to ask, if you're about to move on to the next one, I was going to ask you
Yeah.
something. So at what point would you turn it, so let's say you have other users with limited roles like content creators. At what point would you turn on admin menu for other users?
So I believe the only stuff that shows up is the stuff that they have permissions to.
Right.
Permissions.
So I'm just wondering,
I mean,
what as a matter of style, or
I mean,
you just like it on for everyone if it's going to be on?
I tend to only use it for people who kind of know what they're doing and have a lot of stuff to do, where it gets fairly well nested. If you have a workflow set up where you have content creators and they can just click on the add content page and then click which content type. Turning it on would save them the step of having to first click that and then click which thing they're going to use. But if that's, if that's a workflow that they're fairly familiar with and they don't have anything where they need to kind of drill down into the depths of the system,
Right.
probably not worth turning on. I'd probably just use it for people who actually are doing administration. You might want to give it to people with, who don't necessarily have a user one type level of permissions, but for content creators, it probably would be overkill.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was leaning towards. So.
Yeah, no, I mean it's really useful if you have to get into the guts of things, but if you're just adding content or doing some basic theme tweaks or anything like that, it probably is a bit much. Do you have? Sorry.
No.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were.
I finished what I.
Okay. Any other questions on admin menu? Cool. So user accounts. Again, if you run sites, you may have run into this, but it's something that I always forget, and then I start getting spam notifications. So when you start a site, before you take it live, if you haven't gone and made some changes under user accounts, you should go do so. So if you go to configuration, people, account settings here, so by default, Drupal sets it to anyone being able to create an account, but administrator approval is required. And for a lot of sites, especially kind of informational sites that we run a lot of around here, you don't actually want anyone to just be able to sign up even with approval. You've got your account, you've got the people on your team, all of whom you should probably individually create accounts, or if you're using the CAS module, have them log in and give them a role, or you can use their user ID to give them a role even before they've logged in the first time, which is kind of handy. But you definitely don't want people to just create accounts willy-nilly. And there are spam bots out there that will try to create accounts, and then you start getting these annoying emails. So remember, before you take your site live, probably want to change it to administrators only, and that will save you those spam accounts. This is also a convenient page where you can do things like enable signatures, enable user pictures. If this is sort of more of a community-oriented site, say a blog or things where you want people to create accounts, you can actually set up a default picture so that everyone does have a picture, and you can make nifty grids of users and stuff without having big gaps. So there's a number of useful things to tweak on this page. But particularly, setting it so that only you can create accounts, administrators only, is going to save you some headaches later on.
This is particular to the CAS modules, but do you know a trick to get any way to bulk create pre-populate users using a big list of UIDs? Like if I have
using with the CAS integration?
Yeah, with the CAS integration, because it lets you create one-off, I believe, as a create a CAS account with this UID. Can you?
So CAS has some Drush integration. Are you familiar with Drush?
Yeah.
And just a tiny bit. And there's a the same way Drush has add user. It's called Drush add user or something. User add.
Yeah.
There's a CAS user add.
Okay.
And so you can write a script if you've got just with some basic shell scripting that would loop through an array of IDs and issue that Drush commit. Or that's probably the best.
That's a good one.
And actually, that you can, if you do Drush help, I think it's CAS add user, and read the help, you might be able to give CAS add user a comma-separated list of IDs.
Cool. I didn't even think of doing it in Drush. I mean, I'm not that great at Drush.
As part of the LDAP, I think suite of modules, there's an LDAP provision.
Yeah.
Provisioning, and if you figure out your LDAP query that will just capture your organization, then you can just create that query that integrates with feeds, and it will pull in all the users, and you can map, their profile fields with that. Works pretty seamlessly.
You're also going to probably want to assign a role to all those users, and so so once again, Drush is probably your friend there.
Cool. Thanks.
Getting really fancy with LDAP, you could if you figure out if you there's a way to determine with an LDAP query, okay, everyone who matches these LDAP attributes should have a role. That kind of thing is possible, I think, using LDAP groups.
Okay, thanks. Those are good ideas. That's probably a whole different topic.
Any other questions on users and accounts while we're staring at the page? All right. Real name, another nifty thing about users. So especially with something like, well, let's see. So yeah, so Cass will pull in the name from the directory, but depending on how people have set up their directory, they might not want that showing up. So for instance, let me just log into yet another site here. So if we look at our users here, clearly we've been getting a lot of spam accounts, and I needed to change that setting there. So for instance, Mr. Richard Millay may not want the Mr. showing up in front of all the blog posts that he writes. He might want a different display name on this site than he gets from the directory. If you're doing a site that doesn't have CAS integration, or where you're just creating users and user accounts, again, what the user's user account is may not be what you want showing up with their blog posts and stuff. So you can use a module called real name, where, let's see, which what do I have here? So if you take a look at it, you can specify what token gets used for that. And in this case, as part of the user profiles, I've set up a field for name, and I'm using that as the pattern here. But it'll show all of the user fields that are available. You could construct it, with a first name and then a space and a last name. But this is pretty convenient, and this gets subbed in anywhere that the username would show up for public display, and I think possibly internally as well. So things like, with the author and date information, the real name would show up rather than the username, which is pretty handy. Any questions on that one?
Another one related to CAS and users. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And real name possibly. I, do a lot of select them in by their UID, but then I'll have, you get these, it's really irregular what people have as their name, like, PhD, comma PhD, things like that are illegal, but, within the Drupal core, but it allows creation apparently of the account with that name, and so if you go to make an alteration to that user's attributes later on, Drupal will, yell at you, oh, you can't have a comma PhD. Is there any workarounds for that kind of thing that you guys are aware of?
So that's something that I run into. I maintain. So there is if you're interested in CAS, there on GitHub. There's under the GitHub user UCB-ist-Drupal. There is a project called UC_Berkeley_CAS, which is a pre-configured CAS that will work pretty much out of the box. You have to go through you have to understand features and stuff like that. You need some dependencies. Anyways, one feature I have planned for that, just a little bit down the list, is just filtering that stuff as the LDAP data comes in and saying, like, if I see these patterns, get them out of there.
Yeah, so I've been using UCB CAS, but yeah, there's
nothing right now.
If you're using feeds to get stuff in, you could use feeds tamper to strip that stuff out.
I'll consider using feeds in the future. So
for like doing like a bulk import, but
So also, if you depending on your setup, you may have it set up so that every time they log in, it refreshes their data from LDAP.
Yeah.
And that's something you have to handle as well. Like if you have a solution where on import you strip everything out, like a comma or whatever, then that'll also have to run when someone saves it, or when someone logs in. If they're pulling the info in from LDAP, then it'll put the comma back in.
Yep.
And it'll blow away the other changes
Yeah.
they made.
Yeah, I've had that happen too.
Yeah.
So then you can also map LDAP attributes to user fields. So Quinn had some cool fields added to her user for like first name and last name, but like out of the box, we wouldn't have that. So like for a CAS implementation, you can in the CAS module specify what LDAP values should go into what fields.
Yeah, I think I've played a bit with that, trying to glue together the tokens,
Right.
your CAS your surname and your first name kind of thing, and just have
exactly.
a normalized name of some sort.
Yeah.
It's totally irregular. You could be last name, first name, comma PhD. And, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions on names and real names and all that jazz? All right. So spam, as I mentioned, you will get spam. There are a couple different approaches to dealing with it. I mean, the easiest way is to just not allow any users to do anything or submit anything on the site. Then you're guaranteed no spam. But even something as simple as a contact form, you're likely to end up getting some spam. So there's the CAPTCHA module, which is sort of a meta module that lets you plug in different things like I think by default it has some like basic math stuff. There's a plugin for reCAPTCHA that you can do on top of the CAPTCHA module to pull that in. Recently I've been using Mollum, which is the spam solution developed by the same developer as Drupal itself. That's been reasonably good. Another approach that I've used, and I still have this on some forums where I don't want a CAPTCHA showing up and bothering people, is the honeypot module. And this one's kind of nice. What it does is it creates basically invisible fields that when spammer algorithms are going through, they'll they basically fill all the fields with crap. And if anything gets put in this invisible field, then you know that it's being done algorithmically, and it just gets chucked out instead of landing in your inbox. So that's pretty handy. And then another recent one that I've used is SpamBot. I'll pull that one up here. So this could be more effective. I think the database that it's drawing against is so far from complete, it's not even funny. But if you have a site where you do want a lot of people to register for it and you don't want to have to approve all the accounts, you are inevitably going to end up with a number of spam accounts. So this will go through, it gives you the option of going through existing user accounts and identifying based on username, email, and or IP address, and you can configure which ones it uses. To pull out ones that are associated with known spammers. So it's not perfect, but it does at least take one step towards cleaning up some of the crap that can pile up in your account. But between Mollum and Honeypot, I've managed to mostly keep spam posts off of the various sites that I run that have open sign up. So that's been reasonably effective. And I mean, one of these sites, literally gets thousands and thousands of, spam user account signups per day. So I mean, we're getting a whole lot of crap, but very little of it has made it through. So that's been pretty good. Yeah.
I'm going to be adding an appointment setting module to the site. Do most of the modules have some of this built into it already, or I have to actually go on?
Spam protection is something that you can need to deal with as a separate security measure. There's modules kind of add whatever functionality they're going to add, and they're not kind of built with that in mind. You kind of have to deal with your spam protection some other way. So if you're having users, if you're using the CAS module and making it so that people have to be signed in order to create an appointment, then you should be reasonably well protected just on that. This is more of an issue if you have, say, a blog where you want to have public comments, or a site where you're not using CAS or some other thing where you know that anyone who can get in either has a hacked account or is a legitimate user. Yeah. Other thoughts on spam?
I wanted to note, just with CAPTCHA, it's not the most friendly option from an accessibility standpoint. If someone's using a screen reader to access it, it's just, I think there's an audio option, but I don't think it works all that well. So my understanding is that Honeypot is the much more preferred method from an accessibility standpoint for spam prevention. I don't know about this one that you're just featuring too, but chances are it's better than CAPTCHA SpamBot.
Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know if this, I think this is basically sort of like cleanup after the fact.
Yeah, so that's probably too.
Great, thanks. So spam. Dates. I don't know about you, but I am not a fan of any of the default date types that Drupal offers out of the box for how you can display dates. I don't really care about what day of the week it happened to have been, for instance, and yet that seems to be, Drupal really seems to care about days of the week. And so when you set up let's say you're using views and you create a field for a date, you have the short, medium, and long options for dates, and I don't really like any of them. So one of the convenient things to do is you can, from views itself, specify a custom date type and then just set it up the way you want to. I usually do like day, month, year. Or you can kind of set it up once and for all and then be able to refer to it any other time you need it. So and this is buried super deep in the configuration where you might not necessarily find it. So configuration, regional and language, date and time, formats. You can then add a format. And then you have to pull up the PHP manual if you don't happen to remember whether it's capital D or J and Y, and it's so once you figure out what date format you like, you can copy and paste or just type in the letters and set that up as a date here, and then you can refer to it when you're using views or elsewhere. It's kind of handy. Does anyone else have date problems? Yeah.
I am creating a blog with the articles put in, and I would like to get rid of all the dates, time, and the author's information. You helped me before, but I forgot how it was done.
Yeah, that's actually somewhere else entirely, of course. So with that, that actually is under structure, content types, and we can just pick whatever. Here's the content type. And so don't go into the manage fields part, but just click on the content type in question. It'll go to the administration screen for that. And down here under, where is it? Display settings. Ah, thank you. So we get to it eventually. Under display settings, uncheck display author and date information, and that will just take care of that. Yeah.
That controls the display of the default page, but I'm pretty sure that that information will show up in the search result, for example, even if you uncheck that.
Yes, I mean it's still stored there.
No, but if you type in a search, if you do so you uncheck that and then it won't show up on your content page. But if you do a search that returns a result that includes that content item, then the username and published date will be displayed in the search result.
And do you have to? Where do you have to go to Display Suite to get to the pointer? Yeah.
Yeah. So it drives me crazy. I hate it because unless you're, I mean, maybe if you're using real name and you have a nice date format or whatever, it'll show up okay. But I don't. Usually, the most important thing to show in the search result to me isn't the random admin person who typed the page in.
Yeah.
Or remove it. The blog, it might be more useful to see who posted it, but not with like generic content pages. So I don't actually know how to do it other than editing the theme because I'm not using Display Suite. So.
Yeah, so Display Suite, for what it's worth, I do actually have a site that uses it, and I only vaguely remember how I set it up because it's one of those things that is extremely powerful. But easy to forget the details of how it works. I think I actually made myself write it out somewhere, but there's the concept of view modes, and you can specify what things appear there and don't appear there. It's sort of like the field display thing for an individual content type, but you can set up different options for the node itself, how it displays in search results, how it displays as a teaser mode. You can get really specific with different varieties of it and choose whether or not to display things like the author and the date and all of that. If you just want to get rid of it from your search results, it might be better to kind of Google your way to finding what the string is that you need to get rid of in your theme, rather than going deep into display suite. But it is a set of options if you want a powerful and possibly confounding, module to change. Yeah.
So there are view modes without display suite, but while you can control the fields and the labels, you can't actually control the meta information like the node links and the author date. So, I mean, it looks like you can control it with display suite, but if you're looking at view modes and you don't have display suite, then you won't see those options.
Yeah. Now there's a lot more. I see views, displays. Oh, here we are. Let me see the page. So you can create like field groups and tabs and things like that. I mean, it's really nice to play around with. There's a lot you can do with it, but it can get a little bit. You can get lost in the bowels of display suite fairly easily.
Without getting too down into the weeds, would it allow you to do something like replace the created date with last update date? Because we deal with a little bit more static pieces of data rather than blocks, which you kind of want to know when they're created. But I've always had a really tough time just doing like a global replace of the date created, replace that with updated.
Just completely rewrite rewrite that stuff that comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, probably like the slightly hackish thing I might do in that case is to do like a view and a block with that field. If you were to hide the author date information, because if it doesn't matter when it was created, and then you can create a view that just shows the last updated date for every node, and then create a block with that and stick that somewhere on the page.
I'm pretty sure you could do that with Panelizer too. If you're using panels, you could create a little. You would need to create a block. You could just use the Panelizer to insert a little chunk that says here's. As long as it's an attribute of the node that you can get to, you can just put it on your page.
Great.
All right. So moving on here, link checker. One of the sites that I run is a directory of digital research tools, and so links to individual tools, particularly small homegrown ones, do routinely go dead, or people change the URLs. And this handy one, I can pull it up here on Drupal.org. Will go through your site and identify links, internal or external. You can specify it and show you what's dead. So you can actually, let's pull it up here. So if we can figure it. I only really care about the tool thing itself, so you can choose which content types you want, whether to check the comments, blocks, just external, internal, or external, both of those options. And there's a whole bunch of different types of links that it can check, various filters. You can change the user agent here, how often you want to check them, error handling, and it will also spit out a page here. So it'll show you all of the broken links, what the error was, and then there's a handy edit node directly. You can go right there to change it. You can also change the link settings. So if for some reason there's something that is good, but it was having issues with you can set it to not check it again, so it doesn't keep showing up in your errors page. So that's kind of a handy one. And as always, with the permissions, you can say, you know, which roles are able to access these broken links pages. Any questions on that one? All right. Backup and migrate. This is a handy one. If you haven't used it, you can set it up to routinely do a database backup and save it to some directory outside of Drupal itself. If you're about to do something that you think might be something stupid, you can just quickly download a backup of your database, do the thing, and if things blew up but not too badly, you can go back and just reload the database that you just saved, thereby getting rid of your changes. This only works for a certain level of broken. If you really screw up your site to the point where you can't get back to the backup and migrate page, then you have problems, and you probably want an actual backup from phpMyAdmin or other places where you can get to your database and load it in directly through the database rather than through Drupal itself. But for those times that you want to try something and you want a quick way to undo it if things go wrong, backup and migrate is really handy. Yeah.
So one thing to keep in mind for Berkeley people who might be using Pantheon is that if you enable backup and migrate on Pantheon, you'll notice on your dashboard a little red thing being like, you have backup and migrate enabled. We recommend you not use it. And the reason is backup and migrate uses compression, just some gzip or whatever you have it set to, which it takes a toll on their servers, basically, running those for a lot of different sites. And you can achieve pretty much the same backup and migrate functionality by using the backups feature for each environment.
I can pull it up here just for a comparison. So, yeah, if you're using Pantheon, they do make it easy. If you're not using Pantheon, backup and migrate is kind of spiffy that way.
And then also, if you screw up your site, like Quinn was saying, you can't get to your backup and migrate page, and you are familiar with Drush, backup and migrate does have Drush integration. You probably could restore your database with a Drush command.
So, yeah, there's just a nice little backups tab. You can create a new backup.
There's even the handy restore.
Yes.
Yeah, they put it right there.
Yes, they know users, and yeah.
And you can like those are little
Download
buttons under. You can get just the database, just the node.
Yeah, it's pretty handy that way. But yeah, if you're not using Pantheon, it's handy.
Well, and another thing that's like I do use it a lot on my local sites, and you also can upload a backup and migrate generated backup into that interface, and it'll work in my experience. So
that's
it's all the
handy.
same format.
Yeah, and also you can take a backup and migrate, create it. If your site completely blows up, like not just a little, and you can't get to the module anymore, you can just use a MySQL command to load that in on a completely broken Drupal site.
And that actually works. I was always afraid that there was something about that it wouldn't
It strips
work.
out like cache tables and things like that.
But actually, that's a good thing.
You have to
so.
change the name often to like .SQL instead of .MySQL or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially if you're trying to read it into Aqua Dev Desktop, I think it won't recognize.
Or PHPMyAdmin, you have to change just the ending.
Okay.
The extension, yeah.
Good to know.
That actually works.
It should work.
Yeah.
I've done it with the command line.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can.
I've
If you
done that
change the
a lot.
defaults for backup and migrate, you might tell it to exclude some tables that are necessary, but if you just go with the defaults, then yes, it will work.
And then on Pantheon as well, if you use it, just don't set it to store daily files on their server. You can use it to download, and then you can download the backups to your local desktop or
Right.
network drive.
Because those are saved in your Pantheon files directory, and so your backup will be backing up all of your backups over and over and over again. So it gets kind of exponentially large if you use backup and migrate with a schedule and you save all the files, and you're using Pantheon backups.
And one last thing, just to show from Quinn at all, but just on a security note, something to keep in mind is whenever you dump your database, You're now if everyone's a CAS user on your site, you're a lot more protected. But if you do have like your user one password, it's encrypted in your database. But if you leave that database on, like, say, a public Dropbox, directory or something where anyone can get at it, it's crackable. Like, people could get your user one password. So if you're doing a Berkeley site, just treat databases as sensitive content.
So yeah, this is the interface for a backup default database. Do you want to download it? Your backups directory, default settings. You can create different profiles. Here's an advanced backup that gives you a few more options. Yeah, timestamp format, all of that. So with your profiles, you can edit these. But it's basically the same set of options as the advanced options. You can exclude some tables, exclude the data from the tables. So this is what they were talking about with, this will include the table, so if you need to recreate it from scratch, the table will be there and it won't freak out just like the lack of a cache table, but it won't save all of your cache data, which will make it a lot smaller. Anything else on backing up and migrating?
Why do you still have node scroll up in there on your back page? Back.
There is a why. Yeah, no, I had. What did I? I think that might have been a font thing. What on? Oh, all right. Cloud service. What do you know? I've never used that.
Okay.
It looks like it's just something that's
It comes with
the module.
Okay. Well, I think you might actually have to pay for it.
You have to pay for it to use it, but like the tab comes built in.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So Path Auto, presumably everyone knows and has used Path Auto. If you don't, please install it right away. It's extremely useful. It's essential, really, for getting decent-looking paths. Just as a quick refresh, this is buried deep in the settings. Here we are. Yes, configuration, search, and metadata, URL, aliases. It's so big that my compressed resolution doesn't even show it here. Patterns, you're slightly off the screen. So this is super handy. You can set it up for all your different content types. What it's going to use. This gives you something that looks better than node / whatever the node number is. So that's sort of the basic level of path things that you should know about. So redirects are another thing that might be handy if you're, especially if you're going to be migrating a site that already exists, and you have other paths that end. If you have a not very rational old set of paths from, say, a series of HTML files and like directories and directories and directories, / whatever .html, you can actually set up some of these redirects so that the old URLs for something will map to whatever the new thing is on your Drupal site. So I have a site here that uses that. I can pull it up. Let's go to type is a word. Actually, that's slightly different. Let's do type is committee document. All right, we'll go for this one. So this will appear on your on any node that you're editing down here at the bottom. There's URL redirects, and it looks like I don't actually have one for this one, but you can add a URL redirect, for instance, from its old URL. You can just put it in there. It'll do you can choose the redirect status. I believe you can also configure this module so that it automatically will set up a redirect if you change the path of something, which is particularly handy if you think you know what a page is going to be named and then you change your mind, or if you change the title later and you want it all to line up. It'll do a redirect from the old thing to the new thing without you having to remember to do that yourself. So that's really convenient. And then as one more bit of path and related tools, rabbit hole is something that I discovered when I created a content type that I basically was using this content type just as a way for people to store data, but I didn't want it to be presented in the in the form of that particular node. I just wanted people to put their data in there, and then I would be displaying it using views for the whole thing. So if I pull this up here, we'll reset.
So just remove it from, say, like the content, the view, like you just view all content.
It'll on the content page. It'll still show up here, and I think you can get to edit there, which is important because if you totally hit it, then it would be kind of like lost in the system, and you'd it just sort of be floating there. there's hiding it, and there's hiding it too well from yourself, and so this is I created this, and I think I'll get to this trick later. But I even kind of gave it an ugly name. It's data. This is not something that ever should be viewed by itself. This is just the data. It's going to show up in the view. If someone were to come up with that URL, then it will get redirected to where I actually want it to be displaying data. So rabbit hole settings, page redirect, and then the redirect path is to the view that I've created using this particular value as the argument. So that's kind of handy. I think those are my three things on paths. Does anyone have other path-related questions, thoughts, challenges?
Which module provides the URL URL redirect business there? Is that just redirect?
So redirect provides this URL redirect. Yeah. So this actually was a better one than I thought. These are the old names for this page, or these are the old names for what this would have gone to on the old site, and then we're using rabbit hole to kind of bounce it further to the view.
So we were just having a little thought about whether we should mention pathologic or not.
I don't know that one. Please share.
Well, pathologic is a module, and currently we find it useful on Pantheon. If you have multiple environments for your site, and you have any links that are coded that include that are fully qualified URLs that include like your test environment domain, you can use pathologic. It's a filter, so you put it into your WYSIWYG editor, and it will normalize all the URLs so they apply to the environment you're on. So if you have a link in your page that says http blah 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 test.something.berkeley.edu, you could in pathologic have it filter on that, and then when you're on your live site, it will just say http something.berkeley.edu and then the path. So you give it a list of domains that it should filter, and then so that'll be your dev environment, your test environment, the default name of your live environment, and then your actual URL, and then it will filter and it will know which environment it's on because it'll be able to tell what domain am I on, and any URLs that match any of the other patterns, it'll convert them into the pattern that's correct for your environment. And this was pretty useful with the older versions of the media module, because when you insert an image, for some reason it put in a fully qualified, domain, including domain link to where the image was, and not just site's default files, whatever.
I think that's because absolute is better for RSS feeds.
Right.
So,
yeah. Yeah. So, but that's actually changing. The media module is now using this little short code with the file ID in it.
Mm-hmm.
So, could be less crucial, but we're using it now, and we might continue to use it for.
But that's nice if you basically set all your links up on a test site, and then when you push it to your live site, you're like, crap, I'm now going to go change all those links everywhere, or you could do a SQL replace if you know how to send that to the database, but this just leave them as is, and it will pathological take care of it for you.
Cool. Thanks. Any other thoughts on paths before we get the next one? All right. Views bulk operations. Hopefully, many of you have encountered this one. It's a pretty spiffy way to basically do things in bulk to large numbers of nodes. Let's see, is this a... I'm trying to remember which modules I've installed on which sites. Yes, that's the one. All right, so we can add a new view. Yeah, sure. I need to set this to fields. Yeah. And then you can add a bulk operations field for content or content revision. I think one changes it and then one changes it as a revision, if I had to guess. You apply it, and then you can actually choose some of the settings here, how many things load at once, and then you can choose which options you want to make available to do to a bunch of nodes. So you can change the author, delete things, delete a revision. If you have the flag module installed, you can flag or unflag things, publish content, send email, save. There's a bunch of different options. Updating the node alias. This can be handy if you say change your path auto settings, and then you need to kind of reload everything to get the new URLs. You don't have to save them all individually. You can do it in bulk this way. So this is really handy. There's also, I believe, a way to run arbitrary code if you know how to write some that will apply, and it'll apply to all of them. So there's a lot of different options, and it's kind of nifty. Any questions about Views bulk operations? All right. Automatic node titles. So this is one of my favorite tweaks for content types that really don't naturally have a title. And we can go back to the example of this award content type here. So what I have here is basically trying to do a foolproof award data input page for people to be able to create new awards and not have to worry about creating then multiple pages and having things show up. With this, when they create an award node, all the data will automatically appear in the right places in the different tabs that I've set up. So we have the award name. That looks like that actually is going to be the title. So maybe I didn't use automatic node titles on this one. Maybe I did. Well, we'll see. No, I think I did here. All right, we'll take a look. We have award name, we have purpose, and so on and so forth. But I don't actually want them to define the title, because the title I want to be this data here. I want it to be something that's different than the actual name of the prize, because again, that's like a views generated page. So if we look at the content types and the award content type here, you can see how I've set up. Here we go, the automatic title generation. So you can choose between automatically generate the title and hide the title field. Automatically generate the title if the title field is left empty or disabled. I usually use it in circumstances where I want to hide the title field rather than giving people an option to leave the title field blank. So in this case, I took the field award name, which was a required field, and then did a colon and data. So let's say that you have a content type for like a timesheet entry it doesn't make sense to like make people think of a title for every entry into the timesheet. You can use automatic node titles to put together, say, the person who entered the time, how much time it was, and what project it was worked on, and like maybe the date. Just sort of like throw those fields here together, and that will be your title for purposes of Drupal. And then Drupal's happy, and you have useful information, and you don't have people kind of confounded by like, what do I put in this title field? So automatic titles, it's great. Any questions on that one?
So you could make I'm just thinking of a case that I might be working on where you have, so you're creating a node title based on some other aspects of the node, like you have a select list of topics, but if you have something like other, then you probably need to make a custom token to get actually the value of other instead of just other. Like if you wanted to have topic name date as your node title and you had auto node titles, but topic name could be other with a separate text field. If you chose other, put it in here.
Yeah.
And you need to do some kind of custom token to do that.
Yeah, or I mean, you could do something clunky like, other, and then like what the actual value of the other thing is, which would be blank in most cases. But you have to do something kind of tricky to do that. All right. So modules. In case you don't know where to put modules, and I know this seems like a very basic thing, but I won't even get into how many years I was putting modules in the wrong place and not even realizing it because I hadn't really read the documentation before I started using Drupal. I taught myself Drupal while I was not paying attention in class in college. So, perhaps that was the moment I chose to pay attention instead of reading the documentation about where you put modules. If you don't know where to put them, please cites all modules, or cites whatever your site name is modules, if there's a module you only want available for your particular site in a multi-site setup. But yeah, for years I had the clever homegrown system of prepending a queue in front of any module that I had installed in the modules folder, because it's the modules folder, that's where you put the modules, right? Yes, don't do that. It made updates very difficult. Put them in the sites all, put them in something in sites, so when you update your core, you can just like delete the sites folder and then overwrite everything, and everything else is fine. Yeah, so sad tales. Be sure you put the modules in the right place.
Where is this suggested?
It's the sites. So this is the thing. When you actually, I deleted that, but here let's go for so here, this is a the Drupal package here. Don't put them here where it says modules. You want to put them in sites, all modules, or sites defaults, modules, or sites, your site here. You can create, if you have a multi-site setup, you'd have multiple folders, and put them in there. Yeah, that way it becomes really easy to update core. But this is like the grand temptation for everyone who installs Drupal. You see the modules folder, you want to put it there, and don't do it.
So will it say directly by itself?
It'll work fine if you do it that way. But when you overwrite that directory, when you update the Drupal core, which is basically all of those directories minus the sites folder, you'll either have to be very careful to not overwrite the modules and just move the ones that you did, or you'll lose all your modules, and that's not good.
I've had this question in the back of my head actually. For if you're using multi-site, so you're here in sites and you have your sites and your multi-sites.
Yeah.
Sites.
Yes.
Bucket.
Sites.
How does it resolve different installations of like if you have one version of a module in all modules?
As I understand it, your site's directory takes priority.
Yeah.
So I think I've done this before successfully, where I had a module that had to have an older version of views, otherwise it wouldn't work. So, but everything else I wanted to update, so I kept the old version of views in the modules folder of that particular site, updated the one and all, and then everyone was happy.
And for that, I guess you could have different versions of the same module installed here, but do you get to pick?
You don't get to pick. Who
wins?
So the site for, or the modules folder for the site that you're in, if you have a modules folder in there, that overrides what's in all.
Okay. Just using all modules, for example, like when you get 2 versions of the same module in.
In the same directory.
Yeah.
Well,
they would override.
One would override each other because they have the same name, right?
Right. I guess that's right.
So.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Actually, what would happen if you named one views and then just changed the name of the other to views too? Would it?
PHP errors.
Cannot redeclare function name.
Okay. All right.
And something to keep in mind with the multiple versions of modules in different places in the path. I mean, it will work most of the time, but there are instances, and I'm not sure, maybe one on my team can say exactly when it happens, but if you're running update DB or cache clear, where you'll see that you can't redeclare function, it'll be a PHP error on your web page, a little red error. And it has to do with Drupal's module registry and how it's iterating through, and PHP will momentarily see there are multiple places in the code where function foobar has been defined, and that's just something that throws a warning to PHP.
Yeah, we ran into it when running update PHP via Drush, and on the Pantheon dashboard.
There's something called registry rebuild. You can run it through Drush. You actually have to go to the project page. It's not a module, but it'll tell you how to set it up. And once in a while, when you're really screwed up, you can do Drush registry rebuild RR, and things will come back to life.
Your life.
Yeah.
On Pantheon, you wouldn't be doing a multi-site anyways, so that should hopefully.
But you could have a module in the profiles directory, and the site's all modules.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
All right, so sometimes it's useful to try a dev version of a module, especially if you're following an issue in the issue queue and you see that something has been committed in the dev version of the module, but it hasn't been released as a stable version yet. Sometimes if you're having a problem and that does fix it, it's worth going with the dev version. But again, other things might be unstable, so be careful with testing and so forth, because fixing one problem might cause others. When you use an old version, sometimes there are modules that require older versions of dependency modules, and then sometimes then you have to choose between whatever features are in the newer version and using your module with the old dependencies, unless you have a security warning, in which case you really should consider whether there's another module that is more up to date and doesn't have a dependency, or that will allow you to move forward with a module that has had a security update, so you're not stuck on an old version. So, a few thoughts on that. Patching is a useful thing to learn how to do if you really want to go out on a limb with things that haven't even been committed to a dev version yet. This isn't always as dodgy as it sounds. It can be. It definitely can be, and terrible things can happen if you do this. But sometimes there are cases where the actual module maintainers aren't really maintaining the module anymore, but there's a fairly active user community. So even though patches are going through and they're being tested and people are saying, yes, this works for me, there may not be a dev version released, let alone a live version that actually has the patch applied. Sometimes people will be nice and they will patch a version of the file and put it on Dropbox for you to download and just replace it with. But the instructions for patching a file, particularly if you have Git on your machine, it's really not that hard. There's a Drupal page for how to do it. There's a path. You download the patch, you run this command, and it basically makes a few substitutions in the code for the module, and then you're ready to go. But again, this is kind of pretty far out on the limb of testing things. It really only comes up if you want to live dangerously with things that might really blow things up in a terrible way, or module maintainers who aren't really maintaining it anymore. But there's a community of people who can kind of do that maintenance in an unofficial way. But it is an option. It is out there. Any questions on modules and patching and?
One thing I'll just mention is that it might not always be -P1.
Yes. Yeah, I was trying to grab one of them.
It should be, but it depends on, like, I always end up looking at the top of the patch to see, because -P1 is telling it, yeah, I'll let you.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, it's just telling, like, it's a little hard to describe, but the person that created the patch, if they could have created the patch from like 3 directories away, which will result in a patch with more directories in a path at the top of the patch file that need to be stripped out to make the patch apply correctly. And so then you would say like P3, like basically because I'm patching this file from the same directory that the file lives in, but I need to strip out 3 subdirectories that are specified in this patch file. Most of the time it should be P1. They've done it like according to best practices.
Or you can also just, if you don't want to count directories but things are a little bit wonky, you can put it in the same directory as the thing that needs to be patched and then just run this.
Yeah, if you're doing patches for the first time, you can run it with a -- dry run, and that's usually the first time you do it. You have to do it a few times, and it's usually about being in the wrong directory or where you're setting up the command or setting it. So just dry run it first, and then you can make sure that it works before you do it for real.
Cool. So themes, how to choose a theme. This is something that comes up a lot. People browse to the themes directory and they find something that looks pretty and is more or less visually what they want, and they install it, and then they realize that it has no right sidebar, and there's this one page where they really need a right sidebar, or they need a footer, or they have visions of a drop-down menu for which you need something like Superfish or some other plugin, and there's no region to put such a thing to have your drop-down menu in a normal way. So, I mean, my advice for choosing themes is, first of all, make sure that it has the regions that you want. If you need a sidebar, even just once, even just on one page, although if it's just on one page, maybe you can sort of panels your way out of it. But if you need a sidebar, make sure it has a sidebar. If you need a menu bar to do a drop-down menu, make sure it has that. And it's a lot easier to sort of change the colors and the look of the thing than to try to add new regions for blocks. So think about that first. And there's also a variety of modules to add features to your theme, such as, like I mentioned, the Superfish module for doing. There's a couple options. There's Superfish. There's nice menus. There's a couple different modules that will allow you to do kind of drop-down navigation that usually isn't built in with the theme itself. There's also a module called Noggin that will provide a big image banner or something to put at the top of your theme. Not all themes support it, but some of them do. So yeah, again, if you want to add features to your theme, the answer is usually modules. And let's say that you have a theme and you've launched your site and it's going great, and you want to redesign your site, but your site is still live, and you don't want to subject people to watching you muck around with CSS on the live site, especially when it's half done or less. And in this case, theme key comes to the rescue. So theme key allows you to specify on a user-by-user basis even what theme the site uses. So you can set it up so that your old theme is being used by the public and anyone who isn't involved in the actual designing of the site, and then you and whatever designers are viewing the version with the theme that you're still developing. So this way you can do all of your testing, turn things purple and giant and have everything look totally screwed up in the process. and no one will be the wiser until your theme is nice and the way you want it, and you can set it to the site default theme. It's really, really handy. So again, still on theming, I just need this one page to look totally different. This came up very recently for me, where we have our research IT site, we have our big research IT banner, and all of those sort of Berkeley blue and gold extravaganza. But my group is sponsoring a conference, so we want a totally different page for that. So we need just this one page and the subpages to be totally different header. We don't want the name. We don't want the same menu. We want nothing to be totally different. So there is a module for that, of course, called Page Theme, and I can show you what that looks like here. Let's pull up modules. So what you can do is add a theme, and then you add the pages that it applies on. So DHK's 2014 is the home page, and then kind of everything underneath that in the paths. Use a sky rather than our default theme. And there's different weights too. So if you want something really fancy where one theme applies except for certain circumstances where it doesn't, under paths and whatnot, you can sort of change the weight and have multiple options here. But that's how to make this one page look totally different from everything else on your site. It's kind of useful. Any other questions on that or other theme-based stuff? All right, so moving on to debugging. So I managed to find, and I have deliberately not fixed a few errors on a couple pages just so we can have something to look at. That's the problem with bugs. It's often not easy to keep them around for purposes of demonstrations, but here are some terrible looking warnings. So one of the tricks for debugging, obviously, if you see anything that looks like a module name, that's a really huge hint there. So you can check it out. If you just go to the module page itself. Project, we are at panels. And if you look at the issues, you might even just see it there. One of the kind of annoying things that Drupal.org did recently is that you now have to log in to be able to search. So I guess that's an incentive to make an account on Drupal.org if you don't have one already, because it's kind of a pain to not be able to do that. One other thing to do if it's not an obvious problem that you see in those issues is to copy and paste the notice. So we can do this part. What do you know? It comes right up. One thing to keep in mind, though, as you're Googling for errors, you want to avoid copying and pasting anything that is specific to your site. And if you're just kind of like grabbing text off the screen and throwing it into Google, you may not notice, but look very carefully. It's more obvious for things like, oh, well, I know this is one of the other sites in like this multi-site arrangement that I'm running. This obviously, if I Google that, like with the string involved, no one's going to find anything because, that's my site specifically. It gets a little bit trickier if you're dealing with an issue with a field and there's the name of your field somewhere in the error message. In which case, Googling parts of it that don't have your field name will often pull something up. But especially if your field is something pretty generic like name or title, you may not realize that it's actually pulling in the name of your field rather than something that is part of like a universal error message. But if you don't have any hits, try some other variant of it. and that will often pull it up. So
I'd like to get rid of the line numbers too, because a lot of times you'll hit the error in an older version of the module where that was actually erroring on a different line. So
good point.
If you have that line number in there, you might not find it.
Good call. So also the worst kind of error, the white screen of death. Everyone hates the white screen of death. It's maddening. There's a whole page here with ideas for what to do about it. Checking PHP logs often will help you with that. There's something that you can do here in order to turn on errors so that you'll get something out of that white screen of death rather than just like the white screen of, what do you do next with this. One of the things that I discovered recently, was a case where I hadn't tested things sufficiently after I had updated a module. So if you think about what modules might be, feeding into a specific page, and think about whether you've updated any of those recently, and start, sleuthing that way if you don't have access to the PHP logs or don't have access to better ways of troubleshooting it. What had happened to me was I had updated Mollum, and this had made my user sign-up page white screen of death, which was really bad. And what was even worse, it went on for a couple of days before I had noticed it. But that was one where there was actually something wrong, I think, with the module, and they may have released an update to it, fairly quickly after that. So, yeah, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just reminded of a problem that I have encountered before, where it's really painful, where you have a white screen, and it's back to like my messing around with various versions of the modules, and I put in a random module, and I removed it for whatever reason, but then the white screen will come up, PHP error will be like, it can't find that module. I would think that removing the module from the site, all modules, would have eliminated it from being an active module, but it's somewhere in database now that it's looking, views is trying to find, access something that's related to that module that is now gone, and so since it can't find it, it just dies. So how do you resolve that kind of thing?
So there's actually there's an uninstall option that will get rid of not just, you also have to get rid of the module, but it will also get rid of database crap from. So here's a view of all the modules that I have disabled and. So yeah, this will get rid of all of its tables and all the data related to it, and that will sometimes clear things up.
You might only have to disable the module in that situation. Had you disabled it before you moved it?
Yeah, definitely disable it first.
I may or may not have. That might be a contributing factor, yeah.
And another thing to keep in mind with uninstall is, since you are deleting the database tables, it's good to take a second and think, is there any configuration that would be hard to get back?
Yeah.
In the case of the CAS module, it deletes CAS user, so all of the CAS users on your site will be gone.
Yeah,
and
or is it just their CAS usernames, or is it actually?
It's just the users are still there, but the connection between the users and CAS is gone. So then you get the person trying to log in again, and they get user already exists and a red error.
This is a good case where backup and migrate for local is fantastic. Before you try anything, if it's the first time you're doing it, just take 1 second to take a backup and migrate, dump it to your local desktop, and then you're like, oops, restore database, and it's all back. If not, you can also, I'm sure you can find it if you look through in Google Drupal, in the system table, there's a 1 for modules that are enabled, so sometimes you have to go through in a worst case scenario.
Sometimes you just don't know that stupid thing you're about to do was stupid until you've done it.
I know, but that's where memory's cheap, so it's just in case.
Yeah.
Back it up first.
Yeah, no, I think when I'm teaching this course, telling people to back up often, maybe we'll, call backup breaks every 15 minutes just to avoid, terrible things.
Yeah, if you use Pantheon and you're paying for the site, you can schedule daily backups automatically. So in a worst case scenario, you lose that day's work, but you have the morning's database.
So yeah, I think that basically is. I think there's, of course, places to ask questions. The Drupal Stack Exchange, Drupal.org. Good good places to post things. If we've just had a BDUG and you can't wait another month to solve your problem, there are lots of places to post. And with clever Googling, your question may have already been answered. Does anyone else have pressing problems or issues that we can try to help you resolve?
One wish I have, actually, you kind of hinted at this kind of the thing that I'm doing when you mentioned it was about the comment and author things, and you said, oh, I'd just make a view and put it in a block. It's kind of hackish, right? But I do that a bunch. I have a bunch of blocks. Is there a good module that can wrangle the admin blocks view, where I've got a lot of various blocks that I use depending on the content type you're on, or maybe even the the role of the user, whether those blocks are displayed. I would just to be able to slice and dice that blocks admin screen where you have the laundry list of all your blocks. And you don't really know. The way I deal with it is kind of using the block titles to kind of differentiate what blocks are which. But I mean, content area, for example, gets stacked up with.
That's a good request. I have that same problem too. Does anyone?
I don't know a module that attacks that page per se, and I would love to see one. But what I do on some sites is use the context module. Context lets you define contexts within the site based on criteria like content types and whatnot, and then for each context you can define what the block lineup is within that context. And so it ends up taking you away from that page that you hate and kind of thinking about your blocks a different way, and I've found it useful.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I've used context for other things, so like put a different CSS with colors for this stuff and different colors for that stuff, but not for slicing blocks up. Yeah. There's actually a good module that I use for what is it called, module filter or something like that for the modules page that kind of
Right, and there's one for the permissions page as well.
Oh, is there a permissions filter?
Yeah, it's called FPA. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it looks like in Drupal 6, some people did some block admin, some attempts towards the block admin, but there's no Drupal 7 version. Admin block, or that's the opposite of what I
was. Is anyone else having problems with module filters using Chrome under Mavericks? It's all messed up for me. Like, the content. One of those
like module filter for blocks.
It works in Safari, but something's wrong with the JavaScript basically.
Got any plugins in your Chrome?
Yeah, that's probably.
You might try disabling some of those.
That's probably.
Block tab. Wait, what does this do? Block save? No, that's not right. Percy. No. Oh well. No, that's a nice.
Well, like a context.
I also would like that. Any other?
I have a question. You mentioned the page redirect. Is it possible to do the domain redirect? Someone referred to me, and it seems like I need to find other module, and I just couldn't find it. Say if I have a current HTML site, and I create a Drupal site, I want to redirect all the page from the old site to the current Drupal site. Can I do it?
I don't think you do it in Drupal. I think you have to do it on
from the old site. Yeah, but someone was saying I can, but I just couldn't figure it out.
If so, I don't.
Just reset the DNS.
Yeah.
Once you're ready to launch, so you have a domain name that points to this bunch of HTML.
Yeah, that's what I did, but.
Then you have your Drupal site over here. Then you do a DNS change to point the domain at this collection. So then you just have the problem of you have all these old paths that are .html, and that's when you use the redirect module to redirect them from everything after the slash. Basically, you can redirect that stuff within Drupal. So for each page, like you have a page that has a nice Drupal path. And you know what the path was on the old site that should map to it. Then you go into that page, you say add redirect, and you just put in that part of that path that's after the slash, after the domain, and it'll redirect it.
But you still need to do the DNS, like change the DNS on the other
totally
side.
Outside. Yeah, that's just like a hosting change.
Any other last thoughts? All right.
All right.
Oh, thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm gonna stop. How do I end this?